I want to mention that anyone listening to this conversation may contact the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre, the National 24 helpline at 1-800 778888 at any time of the day or night if they are impacted by what Charlene and I are going to talk about. Charlene, this is an appalling story that a man should abuse his daughter, but to do so in the manner he did, which was by subterfuge, by trickery, and you were the unwitting victim of his attentions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Explain what happened, because you were living, I presume, a relatively normal childhood, although I'm not sure whether you were living in fear of your father anyway, for other reasons.
Yeah, I kind of always had a fear of him. He was quite a big man. Not that I had a reason to. I was quite a well-behaved kid and teenager. But upon writing my victim impact statement for court, I did realise that, and it was only then that I realised that the control kind of started with him when I was maybe 13 or 14. But yeah, I started getting messages from a stranger and told me my dad's job was at risk and I needed to do what they say. And I went to him because that's who most girls would turn to. They would turn to their dad in time of need or panic. And it didn't turn out how I had anticipated.
Now, you were getting these text messages demanding that you do certain things. I mean, it's quite bizarre. I know nowadays, and this is obviously some time ago when you were just 18 years of age, before the real growth of social media and the evil that is to be found in those particular quarters. So what was your reaction? And, you know, when you were being asked to do things that you had never dreamt of doing?
Yeah, and I mean, I hadn't had any sexual encounters with anybody at the time. In hindsight, as we know, hindsight is a great thing. I hadn't done anything, so there was nothing to kind of blackmail me with. But in the panic, and I was, as I said, I was a very well-behaved child. I wasn't used to being in trouble, so this was, you know, panic ensued. It was a horrific ordeal, and it was something that, you know, I never knew when the last time was going to be. So, you know, for my dad to be like, oh, you know, you have to do it, it was tough.
So this was having sexual encounters with men that you believed you had not met, and, you know, you were told to wear headphones and blindfolded, and then you were abused. Or forced to do certain things to men. One of the men was in fact your father, and you were blindfolded and you had headphones on, so you didn't realise this was happening.
Yeah, I didn't realise until it went on for 3 years, and I didn't realise until I found a DVD. So basically, 2 of the encounters I was aware of, anyway, 2 of them had to be recorded. And I found those recordings and realised that it was my dad all along.
The shock, I just cannot imagine how such a revelation would impact. But then you're already wounded and hurt and emotionally traumatised by having these encounters anyway. Yeah,
absolutely. So, I mean, even that I knew it was him, I was at such a vulnerable and weak point at that stage. I was so emotionally battered and just broken. I still don't know, and maybe it will come back to me in years to come. I still don't know when it changed from, you know, the blackmail, and obviously I confronted him about it, but I don't know when it then transpired into just open abuse in the home.
So after you discovered, bizarrely, by finding these DVDs, that your father was one of the perpetrators and perhaps the principal one, and then he just said, well, you know now, and he carried on.
Yeah, and carried on for another 4 years.
Did you attempt to confide in anybody at that stage during this 7-year-long period of abuse?
No. I had confided in the one man that I thought was going to help me, and he didn't. So, you know, why would I feel I could turn to anybody else?
Your friends, did they question you? Because I would imagine that your behaviour obviously had to change in some ways, given what you were going through in the privacy of your own home.
Yeah, I mean, I had a part-time job for some of the, I think 3 of those years, and the first 3 years. And I had hobbies, and I mean, he took all of those away. You know, he made me give up my job. My hobby was gone. I'm the type of person that will literally go above and beyond for my friends, and I started not being that person. And my friend, thankfully, called me out on it back in 2014.
One of your friends who called you out on it asked you a very straight question.
Yeah, very
Are you
blunt.
being abused? Are
Yeah,
you being abused by your father? When you said yes, were you tempted, by the way, not to say yes?
I
Or
did.
did you just blurt it out?
No, I did say no. So she asked me in the March of 2014, and I said no, but very kind of, unemotional. No. And she said, you're not defending him like someone that's not being abused. She said, if that was me and someone said that about my dad, I would, lose the head.
How dare you say that about my father?
Exactly. Yeah.
Would be the normal reaction.
Yeah.
But that wasn't your reaction.
No, I did not. I just said no, really cool and collected, and she just kept on my case for the next 3 months until I finally said yes.
At that point, then, you had not confronted your mother, I presume, at this point,
No.
thus far.
No.
So once you told somebody, and it happened to be your best friend who just pushed and pushed and pushed because she was concerned about you, what happened then?
She basically told my mum, and he was forced to leave the family home, and there was never any doubt or. I mean, my mum, she's an amazing woman. So there was never any doubt. There was always support and always belief from her, thankfully, because I know not everyone's story ends that way.
Yeah, I mean, in some cases we've read about over the years, there have been spouses who've been enablers to their husband's abuse, and your mother, she just didn't know anything
No.
of what was happening to you. What was her, her own emotional reaction? Now, she's not here to speak for herself, but what was her reaction as the spouse that this was going on, if you like, under her nose?
I remember everyone on that day, because there was a lot of friends around us. They'd all kind of seen what was going on, as in my behaviour had changed, and they were all really worried. And I remember everyone, including my mum, just breaking down in tears, and I was just this emotionless kind of wall. I just had no emotion whatsoever. But it was heartbreak. She's still heartbroken to this day. But I mean, I say it to anybody. If my mum was a really hard worker, she looked after her own parents. And if she had been in our family home for 23 hours out of 24 hours of the day, he'd have gotten to me in that last hour. This is what these type of people do. They will get to you no matter what.
Now, he did try to say, look, I'll get treatment, but she was having none of it.
No, it wasn't. That wasn't going to cut it. I think maybe he thought, because I had said a couple of times to her before, he's texting me a lot. And that was kind of all I divulged, and she confronted him on it, and I'll stop, I will absolutely, no, I'm sorry. She didn't know the full extent of it. I wasn't going to tell her the full extent of it because it wasn't worth it for me. The abuse just kind of took a step up every time, so there was literally no point.
Now, it's out there now. Your mother knows, your friends know. At what point and how long did it take to decide, look, the police have got to be involved in this?
4 years ago, so 3 years before I started giving statements.
And what was your hesitancy about at that stage?
I had people say, oh, you can't go to the guards, which I don't know why. I'll probably never know why. That was their first reaction. But also, I wasn't ready to talk about it. And even giving my statement was the first time that I had said a lot of it out loud or divulged that to anybody. So it is a lot. It's a massive process. It's a big step, and it's certainly not easy. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that's, if anyone is listening that is considering it, I would say do it. There's a lot of support. Even though you might think there isn't, there definitely is.
How difficult was it when you decided ultimately, I've got to go to the guards, we've got to see this thing through to the end, if possible, to a conviction? What was it like talking to the guards?
It's tough, and they are lovely. I had a really lovely guard taking my statements. She was amazing. But you're divulging, you're saying, as I said, of saying a lot of this out loud for the first time was probably the hardest bit. You also have that doubt in your mind, like, will they believe me? Because I'm very aware this story is unbelievable in parts. It's quite far. It sounds quite far fetched. So there's always, will I be doubted? And then there's always that fear: will the DPP take up the case? After you've gone through everything and all of the statements, there is always that risk that the DPP will come back with no conviction. So it is tough, but now that I'm at the other end, it was worth it.
Now, meantime, your father had not been inactive, having been thrown out of the house.
No.
He got involved in other situations.
He did, yeah, unfortunately. And that was kind of another reason I came forward, because I just had a feeling, I was like, he's not going to stop. I know I was obviously unaware of what he was at when he left the family home, but that was just another kind of reason why I came forward.
Now, recently he was convicted. He did plead guilty to the offences against you, a number of sample charges, which got him an 18-year sentence, 1 year of which the final year was suspended, which is the norm, I think, when there is a cooperation and a guilty plea. But it did take, in spite of all of that, it took a long time to get from your initial meeting with the Gardaí to that day in court.
Yeah, just maybe 3.5 years to get to that point, and then we had 3 court days.
And why does it take so long?
I mean, there's the case file is huge. There's a lot to take into consideration. You have to get, like, my statement, it took me a good while, and I did take maybe a 6-month break in between because it was difficult. I mean, I was doing 6-hour kind of days, just constantly talking about it. There's a lot involved, and I don't think people realise how much is involved. And I had assumed he wouldn't know about it until the charges came back, but that's not the case either.
Now, in the meantime, of course, he was not at liberty during the period of the trial. He was already behind bars for other offences relating to minors.
Yes, absolutely. He was serving a 7.5-year sentence.
So from that point of view, the delay wasn't as critical in terms of safeguarding other people. He was safely behind bars.
Absolutely, yeah.
At that point. In court then, when, the Irish courtroom system, you're pretty much face to face with all of the actors in court.
Yes,
including
absolutely.
The accused. Yeah. What was that like?
I mean, I've been working closely with the ladies from the Rape Crisis Centre, who I have to say are just invaluable, especially in the court process. And I remember having a conversation with them, and we were kind of trying to, predict what might throw me on the day, because I was determined to face him and deliver my impact statement in court. And I had kind of said, okay, well, maybe, he'll be this frail man, because he's quite a big man. He was 20 stone or so. He might be this frail man, and that might throw me. I didn't know whether I'd feel, sorry for him or sympathy or whatever it was. And what actually threw me was that he looked exactly the same. It hadn't had any physical impact on him whatsoever. So that actually threw me. But thankfully, there's a glass panel in the door of the court. I could see him before going in. So I was able to kind of gather myself. And then I don't know where the strength came from. But he looked at me a number of times. I was able to look him in the eye, and then I delivered my statement. And in the court, he was literally right beside me, whilst delivering my statement.
The sentence, which was, as I said, 18 years with 1 suspended at the end, and then a year of supervision upon release. What do you think of that sentence for what you were put through?
I mean, no sentence will ever be enough, but I do feel, I mean, I had maybe looking at historical cases in the past, the headline sentence has been 15 years and then mitigation and all that sort of stuff. I mean, he may have only got 9 or 8 and been out in 5 type of scenario. But the headline sentence was actually 24, which absolutely floored me. I wasn't expecting something like that, but it just shows, the judge took it seriously. He wasn't holding any punches. It was, in relation to other historical cases, it was a massive sentence.
And does he begin that sentence straight away? Is it served concurrently with the remainder of the 7-year sentence that he's been serving?
Yeah, he was originally arrested for my offences in 2019, so it will date back to 2019. And he's also serving, he got 18 plus 5 for sexual abuse. So he will actually serve them at the same time.
Okay, but he will eventually emerge back into the light of day,
Yeah.
I don't know, in 12, 13 years, that kind of thing?
Yeah, 10 years, I think, is what's expected.
You are determined to be seen as a survivor, not as a victim.
Absolutely. I think there's a stigma around victims. We all watch these, American crime shows and Law and Order SVU, and the victims of these crimes are always portrayed as these weak, hurt, and it is hurtful, and I'm not going to say it's not. I'm not going to say it's an easy road, but it doesn't have to determine the rest of your life. It controlled me for 7.5 years, and I am just determined not to let it control me anymore. I did see 2 weeks ago as the line drawn underneath it, and a door opening to become the voice for survivors.
What you lost, though, I mean, you lost your innocence in a way that should not happen. I'm sure it marred your early 20s and perhaps up to the moment of the sentence being passed or the guilty plea being offered. It really destroyed much of what you should have enjoyed right through your 20s.
Absolutely. I mean, I didn't have the typical student life. I didn't go travelling. I didn't have relationships. I don't know whether relationships will be part of my life at any point. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how my healing from it all is going to go, but I'm getting stronger every day, and I'm, as I said, determined now to be a voice and just change things in Ireland for survivors.
And what would you like to see change anyway in the way that your experience unfolded? I mean, I'm not sure whether there was at any point you considered when this was happening to you, when you were being abused, ringing the rape crisis centres, in your treatment by the Gardaí and by the DPP and the processing and so on. Is there anything that you would like to see change?
I mean, the Gardaí and anyone I have dealt with has just been amazing. The Gardaí are phenomenal, and I think they get a bad rap for stuff like this, but they can only control so much. The system, I mean, we were postponed in court at one point. It was dragged across 3 different days, but to be honest, I actually now, looking back on it, appreciated the 3 separate days, because it was like 3 different sections, and it was easier to kind of cope with mentally and stuff. I know waiving anonymity was a massive thing. There is better laws now than there was years ago in relation to, privacy, like GDPR and all that sort of stuff. What I would like to change is, I'd love to get into schools and talk to people. I mean, my friend that saw it in me was training to be a social worker. I always ask, if she hadn't been training and been learning the tools to identify these situations, would I still be in that situation? And I just think there needs to be more awareness around little signs and triggers. I mean, I spoke before about the stroke campaign that was going on a few years ago with the fast, and I'd love to develop something like that just made people more aware of things that they can actually see in day-to-day life and in their friends or their work colleagues that might trigger help that they need and they just can't speak out for.
Yeah, because you look back on it and you realise your own behaviour changed, and it took, one of your pals to kind of worry and wonder about that before finally facing you down. But there may be other situations. I know sometimes teachers are told, if you've got a child who looks hungry and deprived, and maybe might show that there's physical abuse going on at home or neglect, and teachers are told to be alert to this kind of thing. And if there was a methodology, as you say, like FAST, that might indicate that someone was at risk, that would be very useful.
Absolutely, and it only takes one question. Even just they mightn't disclose, like I didn't disclose the first time, but it just might make them go, okay, maybe someone is looking out for me. Maybe the support is there, which is always a doubt. When you're in the midst of that, in that dark cloud, you're like, maybe no one will be there to support me. So it kind of stops you speaking out.
Just on a point of the way the legal thing unfolded, at what point were you told that your father was going to plead guilty? Because I'm sure when you learnt that, it was something of a relief that a full-scale, maybe 2-3 week trial would not unfold.
Absolutely. And I mean, a trial was always kind of in the back of my head, and that wouldn't have been a wonderful situation. We were told he was officially charged, I think, November of last year. But pleaded officially in court in January. So it wasn't confirmed really until January of this year.
So at the beginning of the rest of your life, Charlene, do you have plans? Are you still in the recovery phase? Have you got things that you had to postpone throughout those, should have been exciting days of your 20s?
Yeah, I mean, since he left the family home, I've done like my first girls' holiday, and I've gone on weekends away with my friends, which sound like minor things, but I was never allowed to do them. Or if I did, there'd be consequences. So that has just been amazing. My friends are just a powerhouse and have kept me going for the last few years, and will continue to keep me going for the next few. And it's just one day at a time is basically how I'm going at the moment.
Well, Charlene, just give you a sample of some of the comments that are coming in on our text line from Gerardine. I'm in absolute awe of that wonderful lady, Charlene, speaking about her horrendous ordeals at the hands of her father. What a brave and outstanding person she is, wishing her the very, very best in her life ahead. And I'm sure that's, well, it's certainly echoed by me, Charlene, but echoed by all of our listeners. Another one says, that woman is a true Irish hero, worthy of the same and more of a gold medal. So,
thank you.
A different kind of gold medal. Charlene, look, thank you very, very much for joining us.